The Cybrarian Presents, a serialisation of Robert E. Howard's Conan, The Tower of the Elephant, Part 3. Disclaimer. The following is intended for a mature audience and may contain references to violence, sex, and language that may offend. Cautiously he pressed against the ivory door and it swung silently inward. On the shimmering threshold, Conan stared like a wolf in strange surroundings, ready to flight or flee on the instant. He was looking into a large chamber with a domed golden ceiling. The walls were of green jade, the floor of ivory, partly covered by thick rugs. Smoke and exotic scent of incense floated up from a brazier on a golden tripod, and behind it sat an idol on a sort of marble couch. Conan stared aghast. The image had the body of a man, naked and green in colour, but the head was one of nightmare and madness. Too large for the human body, it had no attributes of humanity. Conan stared at the wide, flaring ears, the curling proboscis, on either side of which stood white tusks tipped with round golden balls. The eyes were closed, as if in sleep. Then this was the reason for the name, the Tower of the Elephant, for the head of the thing was much like that of the beast described by the Shimatush wanderer. This was Yara's god. Where then should the gem be, but concealed in the idol, since the stone was called the elephant's heart? As Conan came forward, his eyes fixed on the motionless idol, the eyes of the thing opened suddenly. The Cimmerian froze in his tracks. It was no image. It was a living thing, and he was trapped in its chamber. That he did not instantly explode in a burst of murderous frenzy is a fact that measured his horror, which paralysed him where he stood. A civilized man in his position would have sought doubtful refuge in the conclusion that he was insane. It did not occur to the Cimmerian to doubt his senses. He knew he was face to face with a demon of the elder world, and the realization robbed him of all his faculties except sight. The trunk of the horror was lifted and quested about. The topaz eyes stared unseeingly, and Conan knew the monster was blind. With the thought came a thawing of his frozen nerves, and he began to back silently towards the door, but the creature heard. The sensitive trunk stretched towards him, and Conan's horror froze him again when the being spoke, in a strange, stammering voice that never changed its key or timbre. The Cimmerian knew that those jaws were never built or intended for human speech. "Who is here? Have you come to torture me again, Yara? Will you never be done? O Yog-Kosha, is there no end to agony?" Tears rolled from the sightless eyes, and Conan's gaze strayed to the limbs stretched on the marble couch. And he knew the monster would not raise to attack him. He knew the marks of the rack and the searing brand of the flame, and tough-souled as he was, he stood aghast at the ruined deformities, which his reason told him had once been limbs as comely as his own. And suddenly all fear and repulsion went from him, to be replaced by great pity. What this monster was, Conan could not know, but the evidences of its suffering were so terrible and pathetic that a strange aching sadness came over the Cimmerian. He knew not why. He only felt that he was looking upon a cosmic tragedy, and he shrank with shame, as if the guilt of a whole race were laid upon him. "I am not Yara," he said. "I am only a thief. I will not harm you." "Come near that I may touch you," the creature faltered, and Conan came near unfearingly, his sword hanging forgotten in his hand. The sensitive trunk came out and groped over his face and shoulders as a blind man gropes, and its touch was light as a girl's hand. "You are not of Yara's race of devils," sighed the creature. "The clean, lean fierceness of the wasteland marks you. I know your people from of old, whom I knew by another name in the long, long ago, when another world lifted its jeweled spires to the stars. There is blood on your fingers." "A spider in the chamber above, and a lion in the garden," muttered Conan. "You have slain a man too this night," answered the other. "And there is death in the tower above. I feel, I know." Aye, muttered Conan. The prince of all thieves lies there dead from the bite of a vermin. So and so, the strange inhuman voice rose in a sort of low chant. A slaying in the tavern and a slaying on the roof, I know, I feel. And the third will make the magic of which not even Ura dreams of. Magic of deliverance, green gods of Yag. Again tears fell as the tortured body was rocked to and fro in the grip of varied emotions. Conan looked on, bewildered. Then the convulsions ceased. The soft, gentle eyes were turned towards the Cimmerian. The trunk beckoned. "Oh, man, listen," said the strange being. "I am foul and monstrous to you, am I not? Nay, do not answer. I know. But you would seem as strange to me could I see you. There are many worlds beside this earth, and life takes many shapes. I am neither god nor demon, but flesh and blood like yourself, though the substance differ in part, and the form be cast in different mold. I am very old, O man of the waste countries. Long and long ago I came to this planet, with others of my world, from the green planet Yag, which circles forever in the outer fringe of this universe. We swept through space on mighty wings that drove us through the cosmos quicker than light, because we had warred with the kings of Yag and were defeated and outcast. But we could never return, for on earth our wings withered from our shoulders. Here we abode apart from earthly life. We fought the strange and terrible forms of life which then walked the earth, so that we became feared, and were not molested in the dim jungles of the east, where we had our abode. We saw men grow from ape and build the shining cities of Volusia, Camellia, Comoria, and their sisters. We saw them reel before the thrusts of the heathen Atlanteans, and Pites, and Lemurians. We saw the oceans rise and engulf Atlantis and Lemuria and the isles of the Pites, and the shining cities of civilization. We saw the survivors of Pictum and Atlantis build their Stone Age empires, and go down to men locked in bloody wars. We saw the Pites sink into abysmal savagery, the Atlanteans into apedom again. We saw new savages drift southward, in conquering waves from the Arctic Circle to build a new civilization, with new kingdoms called Nemedia, and Koth, and Aquilonia and their sisters. We saw your people rise under a new name from the jungles of the apes that had been Atlanteans. We saw the descendants of the Lemurians who had survived the cataclysm rise again through savagery and ride westward as Hyrcanians. And we saw this race of devils, survivors of the ancient civilization that was before Atlantis sank, come once more into culture and power, this accursed kingdom of Zamora. All this we saw, neither aiding nor hindering the immutable cosmic law, and one by one we died. For we of Yag are not immortal, though our lives are as the lives of planets and constellations. At last, I alone was left, dreaming of old times among the ruined temples of jungle-lost Kitai, worshipped as a god by an ancient yellow-skinned race. Then came Yara, versed in dark knowledge handed down through tired days of barbarism since before Atlantis sank. First he sat at my feet and learned my wisdom, but he was not satisfied with what I taught him, for it was white magic, and he wished evil lore, to enslave kings and glut a fiendish ambition. I would teach him none of the black secrets I had gained, through no wish of mine, through the eons. But his wisdom was deeper than I had guessed. With guile gotten amongst the dusky tombs of dark Stygia, he trapped me into divulging a secret I had not intended to bear, and turning my own power upon me, he enslaved me. Ah, gods of Yag, My cup has been bitter since that hour. He brought me up from the lost jungles of Kitai, where the grey apes danced to the pipes of the yellow priests, and offerings of fruit and wine heaped my broken altars. No more was I a god to kindly jungle folk. I was a slave to a devil in human form. Again tears stole from the unseeing eyes. He pent me in this tower which at his command I built for him in a single night. By fire and wrack he mastered me, and by strange unearthly tortures you would not understand. In agony I would long ago have taken my own life, if I could, but he kept me alive, mangled, blinded and broken, to do his foul bidding. And for 300 years I have done his bidding from this marble couch, blackening my soul with cosmic sins and staining my wisdom with crimes, because I had no other choice. Yet not all my ancient secrets has he wrested from me, and my last gift shall be the sorcery of the blood and the jewel. For I feel the end of time draw near. You are the hand of fate. I beg of you, take the gem you will find on yonder altar. Conan turned to the gold and ivory altar indicated, and took up a great round jewel, clear as crimson crystal, and he knew it was the heart of the elephant. Now for the great magic, the mighty magic, such as earth has not seen before, and shall not see again through a million of millenniums. By my lifeblood I conjure it, by blood born on the green breast of Yag, dreaming far poised in the great blue vastness of space. Take your sword, man, and cut out my heart, then squeeze it so that the blood will flow over the red stone. Then go you down these stairs and enter the ebony chamber, where Yara sits wrapped in lotus streams of evil. Speak his name and he will awaken. Then lay this gem before him and say, Yog-Kosha gives you a last gift and a last enchantment. Then get you from the tower quickly. Fear not, your way shall be made clear. The life of man is not the life of Yag, nor is human death the death of Yag. Let me be free of this cage of broken blind flesh, and I will once more be Yoga of Yag, morning crowned and shining, with wings to fly, and feet to dance, and eyes to see, and hands to break. Uncertainly Conan approached, and Yag-Kosha, or Yoga, as if sensing his uncertainty, indicated where he should strike. Conan set his teeth and drove the sword deep. Blood streamed over the blade in his hand, and the monster stared convulsively, then lay back quite still. Sure that life had fled, at least life as he understood it, Conan set to work on his grisly task, and quickly brought forth something that he felt must be the strange being's heart, though it differed curiously from any he had seen. Holding the still pulsing organ over the blazing jewel, he pressed it with both hands, and a rain of blood fell on the stone. To his surprise, it did not run off, but soaked into the gem as water is absorbed by a sponge. Holding the jewel gingerly, he went out to the fantastic chamber and came upon the silver steps. He did not look back. He instinctively felt that some sort of transmutation was taking place in the body on the marble couch, and he further felt it was of a sort not to be witnessed by human eyes. He closed the ivory door behind him and without hesitation descended the silver steps. It did not occur to him to ignore the instructions given him. He halted at an ebony door, in the center of which was a grinning silver skull, and pushed it open. He looked into a chamber of ebony and jet and saw on a black silken couch a tall, spare form reclining. Yara, the priest and sorcerer, lay before him, his eyes open and dilated with the fumes of the yellow lotus, far staring, as if fixed on gulfs and nighted abysses beyond human ken. Yara, said Conan, like a judge pronouncing doom, awaken. His eyes cleared instantly, and became cold and cruel as a vulture's. The tall, silken-clad form lifted erect and towered gauntly above the Cimmerian. "Dog!" His hiss was like the voice of a cobra. "What do you here?" Conan laid the jewel on the great ebony table. "He who sent this gem bade me say, Yog Kosha gives a last gift and a last enchantment." Yara recoiled, his dark face shy. The jewel was no longer crystal clear. Its murky depths pulsed and throbbed, and curious smoky waves of changing colour passed over its smooth surface. As if drawn hypnotically, Yara bent over the table and gripped the gem in his hands, staring into its shadowed depths, as if it were a magnet to draw his shuddering soul from his body. And as Conan looked, he thought that his eyes must be playing him tricks. For when Yara had risen up from his couch, the priest had seemed gigantically tall, yet now he saw that Yara's head would scarcely come to his shoulder. He blinked, puzzled, and for the first time that night, doubted his own senses. Then with a shock he realized that the priest was shrinking in stature, was growing smaller before his very gaze. With a detached feeling he watched, as a man might watch a play, immersed in a feeling of overpowering unreality. The Cimmerian was no longer sure of his own identity. He only knew he was looking upon the external evidences of the unseen play of vast outer forces beyond his understanding. Now Yara was no bigger than a child. Now like an infant he sprawled on the table, still grasping the jewel. And now the sorcerer suddenly realized his fate, and he sprang up, releasing the gem. But still he dwindled, and Conan saw a tiny, pygmy figure rushing wildly about the ebony tabletop, waving tiny arms and shrieking in a voice that was like the squeak of an insect. Now he had shrunk until the great jewel towered above him like a hill, and Conan saw him cover his eyes with his hands as if to shield them from the glare as he staggered about like a madman. Conan sensed that some unseen magnetic force was pulling Yara to the gem. Thrice he raced wildly about it in a narrow circle. Thrice he strove to turn and run across the table. Then with a scream that echoed faintly in the ears of the watcher, the priest threw up his arms and ran straight toward the blazing globe. Bending close, Conan saw Yara clamber up the smooth, curving surface impossibly, like a man climbing a glass mountain. Now the priest stood on the top, still with tossing arms, invoking what grisly names only the gods knew, and suddenly he sank into the very heart of the jewel as a man sinks into the sea, and Conan saw the smoky waves close over his head. Now he saw him in the crimson heart of the jewel, once more crystal clear, as a man sees a scene far away, tiny with great distance. And into the heart came a green, shining, winged figure with the body of a man and the head of an elephant. No longer blind or crippled. Yara threw up his arms and fled as a madman flees, and on his heels came the Avenger. Then, like the bursting of a bubble, the great jewel vanished in a rainbow burst of iridescent gleams, and the ebony tabletop lay bare and deserted. As bare, Conan somehow knew, as the marble couch in the chamber above, where the body of that strange trans-cosmic being called Yag Kosha and Yoga had lain. The Cimmerian turned and fled from the chamber, down the silver stairs. So amazed was he that it did not occur to him to escape from the tower by the way he entered it. Down that winding, shadowy silver well he ran, and came to a large chamber at the foot of the gleaming stairs. There he halted for an instant. He had come into the room of the soldiers. He saw the glitter of their silver corselets, the sheen of their jewelled sword hilts. They sat slumped at the banquet board, their dusky plumes waving somberly about their drooping, helmeted heads. They lay among their dice and fallen goblets on the wine-stained lapis lazuli floor, and he knew they were dead. The promise had been made, the word kept. Whether sorcery or magic or the falling shadow of great green wings had stilled the revelry, Conan could not know, but his way had been made clear, and a silver door stood open, framed in the whiteness of dawn. Into the waving green garden came the Cimmerian, and the dawn wind blew up upon him with the cool fragrance of luxuriant growths. He stared like a Mao waking from a dream. He turned back uncertainly to stare at the cryptic tower he had just left. Was he bewitched or enchanted? Had he dreamed all that seemed to have passed? As he looked, he saw the gleaming tower sway against the crimson dawn, its jewel-crusted rim sparkling in the glowing light, and crash into shining shards. Thank you for listening to Robert E. Howard's Conan, The Tower of the Elephant, presented by the Cybrarian, music by Solar Flare. For the continuation of these adventures, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.